Brought to you by Hug House Productions.
Hi, hello, listener of Never Morphed. If you like this show, I am convinced you are going to love The Newest Olympian by Mike Schubert. Why am I so certain? Because that's one of the shows that inspired this show. Real ones who listen to the credits already know. Each week, Mike dives into the Percy Jackson series, which I love, joined by guests who are longtime fans of the Rick Riordan series. If you haven't read these books yet, this is the perfect way to get started and read along with Mike. They're so good. And like Animorphs, they're kids' books that touch on way more serious topics than you might expect. And they're about worldwide mythologies, starting with Greek and Roman. I know you gays love mythology. If you have already read the books and know how good they are, you'll love this series too. The dramatic irony, man. And if you know about the books from the Disney Plus series, Mike has done interviews and conversations with some of the cast of the show on The Newest Olympian too. Mike is a great host, a great editor, and obviously a huge inspiration for me. You can find The Newest Olympian in the show notes or wherever you get your podcasts. Go subscribe right now and enjoy.
Brought to you by Hug House Productions.
Welcome back to another episode of Never Morphed, a series in which I read every Animorphs book for the first time. As always, this podcast is about books for kids, but this podcast is definitely absolutely not for kids. This is especially true for this episode for two reasons, one fun and one less fun. Let's start with the fun. In the extended version of this conversation, which you can find at patreon.com/hughousepods, my guest and I share some very hilarious stories about being very unsober. Also a huge interlude on Boston Market. But less fun, we spent a good deal of this episode talking about the cycle of abuse. It starts at editing will timestamp here.
Hi, just about 38 minutes.
And goes to the end of the episode. If you aren't comfortable with listening to that conversation for any reason, you can just stop the episode at or before that timestamp or tap out anytime if you need to. Take care of yourself. My guest for Book 6 is once again the wonderful Cian Josephs, who you might recognize as the videographer from our newest podcast, The Deposition. He was also my guest for Book 4. He is our resident Cassie stan. But Cian, you'll hear me call him Noah, also reminds you to please, if you can, support the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. Link in the show notes. Enjoy the first third of our conversation about Book 6, a book I knew was going to go hard and be a nightmare because everyone in the Patreon Discord was excited for me to read it. And boy howdy, it did not disappoint. Okay, Noah, thank you so much for joining me for Book 6. And let me just start off by saying, hey, what the fuck?
Hey, what the fuck? So I just want to give quick context for audience. Hi, I'm Noah. I was here for Book 4. Book 6 was actually the first book that I requested to record with you. That was as soon as you were like, hey, I'm doing an Animorphs podcast, I was like, I have to be on for Book 6.
Yes. I don't blame you. I'm shocked I didn't get tons of requests. Because this book is crazy.
This book is fucking insane. I want to establish just real quick as context for some of the language I'm going to use in this episode.
Yeah.
I am very mentally ill. I have been institutionalized before. I'm allowed to say all of the words I'm going to say to describe the events of this book.
Yeah, rest assured, Noah and I aren't doing microaggressions. We're doing a deep understanding of what the word insane means.
I'm really excited to go through all of this with you because I actually, this week has been crazy for me, just work stuff, personal stuff. And so I have not had much of a chance to go through your notes yet for this book. So I'm so excited. I sent you some of my notes last night.
Yes, so good.
But I'm excited to see everything you think about this.
Yeah. So as I'm reading these books in the Hug House Patreon server, patreon.com/hughousepods, I am like talking about the books as I'm reading them. There is a specific channel that is just for Animorphs spoilers that I can't even access. But then there's also a channel where I am like routinely checking in about my reading process. And everyone, after I was done with book 5, everyone was like, I can't wait for you to read book 6. And that is how I know that I am going to be reading something so completely fucked up. Like, anytime they're really excited, I know that the book is going to be a fucking nightmare. And it was. And I only try to read one book ahead of, or like I try to not read ahead of what I record for. So I haven't read book 7 yet. I think the only time I've done anything different was for books 1 and 2. I read those. I was anticipating to record for both of those books in one session, which was deeply foolish. So I haven't read book 7, and everyone in the server is like, oh, if you thought 6 was crazy, we can't wait until you get to 7. So I'm terrified.
What? I'm pulling up on the Animorphs wiki right now because I can't
Yes.
remember what. But oh,
no! I know it's a Rachel book, and I know my girl's got problems.
Yes.
Awesome.
It's I'm excited to see your reaction to that. Good luck.
Thanks. I'm probably gonna read it this weekend. We'll see. My God. Okay. So
Okay.
let's jump into this book. I'm gonna start as usual with like the practicals here. So this is book 6, The Capture. Our POV character is Jake, and super importantly, this is our first book where we have returned to a POV character. So this is the first time that a narrator is narrating their second book, which is a clumsy way of saying that all, but it's super important because it's our first moment of real comparison where, you know, we got Jake in book 1 before any of this shit went down. We're introduced to him being a normal boy, just normal. And then now we've had 5 books worth of almost dying every like 48 hours maximum. And so the boy has grown, changed, morphed. He's morphed. So that was already like, I was really excited to get back to Jakey Boy. It's been a while. This was published in February 95, which I think is we're on like the second or third like blast of books being published at this point. This one's not ghost written yet. 27 chapters. The tagline is, now he's one of them. And I would guess that this is in reference. This is not in reference in anything. This is more scholastic bullshit. Certainly. This is just a marketing tagline. But I would have to say, like, so the cover is him morphing into a fly, which already signaled to me that I was in for a bad time. Like, I saw that and I remembered the ants, and I was like, oh no. And I think this is the first book that does not yet have a graphic novel adaptation. There have only been 5 graphic novels, or maybe even 4 published. And earlier this week was my birthday, and one of my partners got me the first 3 graphic novels as a gift, and I was over the moon. I was so elated. And she specifically said, I could have gotten you all 4, but I didn't know if you would want the 4th. She didn't want to give me whales for my birthday. Very considerate.
That is so fucking funny.
Okay, so jumping right in to chapter 1. We're getting a lot of the typical exposition where Jake is talking about his life and, I'm not going to tell you my last name, meow, meow, meow. He is at breakfast with his family. And the first thing I picked up on is Jake in this book has taken his hero complex and spun that into just fully self-destructive tendencies. So he is talking with his family and that's all going fine, but he's also thinking about how they are going to be getting a cockroach morph to do more like stealthing and infiltration missions. I don't think that a cockroach was the only way to do this.
No, probably not. I highlighted a little section that I just want to call out real quick.
Please.
So this is when they're all eating breakfast together. And there's a part that says, as I sat there across the table from Tom, I was trying to decide something. I was trying to decide whether I would have to ever destroy him, destroy my brother who was not my brother, not anymore.
Welcome to Animorphs.
Welcome to Animorphs. And I just wrote down in my notes, I copied that in and then captioned it, love this. Jake's life is so fucked up. It's just like,
it really is.
I feel like that this is like, I feel like it's interesting, like you were saying, just like the comparison now to like the previous book and thinking about how, Jake's first book, which was the first book in the series, starts with him hanging out at the mall, being bummed out that he didn't make the basketball team,
playing video games with Marco.
And then his second POV book starts with him wondering if he will ever be forced to murder his brother because they're on opposite sides of an intergalactic war.
Yeah, his brother who is like ostensibly he's possessed. Like it's not
he's
even
fucking possessed. Now I'm just thinking about that like from a Bim Bam clip. The like, are you fucking possessed? You used to be my brother.
Yeah.
Except instead of Jimmy Buffett, it's alien parasite worms. Okay.
So we're off to a really strong start here. I also want to call out. So this was like late 90s, early 2000s, and they're talking about the family's plans for the day because Tom is going to be at the sharing tonight. Which is why Jake is getting this cockroach morph to infiltrate the sharing to see what the fuck is going on there. Because they know that shit's afoot, as you do. It was last book that we established that they have some kind of plan with somebody who's a local government official. I think he's the mayor. And then he is going to be running for president. So they know that that's like bad. So they are trying to figure that out. And then while they're talking, the parents also say that they're going to be out the rest of the day because they are going to go play tennis. Now what this signaled to me is that his family is like rich. Like, I don't think that I really grasped that before. I knew that they were like well off because they had a big, beautiful house, but they're like rich, right? Like tennis is for rich people, right?
See, this is interesting because I don't necessarily view tennis as like a rich people thing, just because like I can think of like a lot of places around here where you can just like go to a tennis court for like either free because it's like at a community center or something or pretty cheap. For me, the rich person's sport is golf, which I hate.
Yes. Fuck golf. Abolish golf courses, genuinely. That's kind of pretty much chapter 1 is we know that Jake is going to get a cockroach morph because he has self-destructive tendencies that he is putting under the guise of a hero complex, which, So, okay. So in chapter 2, Jake is transforming. And okay, I should also note that Jake caught a cockroach.
Caught a cockroach.
Caught a cockroach in a matchbox, which will come up later. He decides that what he is going to do for this cockroach morph is he is going to test it on his own, alone in the house because everybody is gone. He will not ask for help. He will not ask for guidance, even though we all know how awry, like, insect morphs go. And he doesn't have anybody keeping time for him. And also, and this is the real kicker for me. He decides to transform in front of a fucking mirror. Jake!
I love that we both commented on that in like our notes for this chapter.
Yes. Oh my God. He watches himself turn into a cockroach. It's absolutely a fucking nightmare. He hates it. He's having a horrible time. He cannot look away. This is like, I just have in my notes like so many like literal emoji red flags. My boy, yes. You are not well. You are deeply not well.
I really like your note. Sounds like self-destructive tendencies, Jakey boy, in all caps surrounded by red flag emojis.
Yeah. Like
I love Jake so much. Does it make you understand my fondness for Jake more if I tell you that I am the oldest of several siblings?
Yeah.
It was sort of weird. It's like a weird thing where like I technically have two older half siblings, but they weren't really like in that like while I was growing up.
Yeah. So
I was kind of like the oldest person in the house.
Yeah.
And that went how it often goes.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Yes, this makes a lot of sense. I also love Jake because I also love having self-destructive tendencies that I act like are instead selfless acts.
Yes, I love to pretend that self-harm is a noble act.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do actually think it's really fascinating though, because I do feel like Jake's level of like self-sacrifice and his like hero complex and all of that is like pretty common in middle grade protagonists. Yes. But it feels like so much more disturbing here because it's played so much more realistically.
Yes. Disturbing is the right word for it. Like it is truly a subversion of this sort of hero complex, and not in the typical way. I feel like we get a lot of subversion of, hero complex in regards to like, not to return to our favorite subject ever, but like in a lot of superhero media where you have, a Bruce Wayne and we're interrogating his hero complex and like, ooh, is he really a hero or is he just a villain who aligns himself with police enforcement? Which I guess is a redundant thing to say, villain aligned with police enforcement. Those are the same. Yeah. But but instead here, I really like that the subversion, it just feels a lot more nuanced and a lot more accurate and a lot more real, which is crazy because this is a kid's book. Right. And it takes this so much more seriously than like gritty media for adults. Like this is how a hero complex manifests in a destructive way for everyone.
Yeah. And I mean, I won't go into this here because this is an Animorphs podcast and not a DC podcast, but allegedly, not when we're recording. But I think you have gotten, my rant before about how, hi, my name is Noah. I'm a Jason Todd stan. I have read like every comic Jason Todd has ever appeared in.
Yes.
Pre like 2010.
Yes.
And I have talked about how like I have a very deep fondness for like earlier DC comics that honestly had like a much lighter tone. Like as someone who has read a lot of like early DC comics, I would describe the tone as much more similar to like Lego Batman or Wayne Family Adventures than like the Batman actual movie. Modern main comic. Best Batman movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like and like with like Wayne Family Adventures, anytime I see people be like, oh, this is just like stupid wish fulfillment or whatever, I'm like, this is literally exactly what the early comics were like. Like I cannot like this is how it started.
Yes.
And I just don't like the like grim, dark, edgy stuff as much because I just don't think it's ever written real well.
I agree.
But here, yeah, like it's just it feels like they don't like they think they're being really deep and nuanced while bringing the same level of analysis as like a philosophy major who was just introduced to the idea that like other religions exist.
Yeah, and like let's be real, that's mostly who's writing it.
Yeah. But like this, like, okay, you know how like in real life, if you were like talking to or just like hearing like words from a child who has been through some kind of trauma, whether it's like sexual trauma, physical trauma, whatever, like sometimes they will just be talking and you're sitting here thinking, these are not words that a regular child should be saying. Like this is not the way that like a regular untraumatized child thinks. These are not words that an untraumatized child would be saying. And I feel like we honestly have gotten like a really, really great transition in these books from like Jake acting like a normal kid at the very beginning of book 1 to now getting this feeling of like, this isn't how children are supposed to behave.
Yes. Yeah, it's done so well. And I think like as a kid reading this, like you could probably see that there was like a change here and that he got way more serious and like you understand that. But reading it as an adult, that is like exactly what you see is like this is all the check boxes for a deeply traumatized child.
We are watching CPTSD form in real time.
Yep, exactly. So he does this crazy bullshit and he morphs into a roach alone in front of a mirror with nobody around him like a goddamn fool. And then actually he's in the roach body and he's like, oh, hey, this isn't bad. Like, this is actually pretty chill. This is pretty nice. Until a light turns on. And the light is a problem for two connected, but very different reasons. One, he is supposed to be home alone. And somebody has arrived home, and that's not good. This is not going to plan for him. Two, he is a cockroach and a light is on, and so he's panicked because that's new. That's unexpected. Roach brain says scurry away.
Can I real quick make a comment? I was just skimming through your notes and I just want to say something real quick.
Yeah.
I just want to give you, I'm just noticing like some more comments about like the wealth of Jake's family and stuff, which like they do definitely have like a bit of wealth. I know you generally don't like spoilers. I just want to give you context for something that I think is important for like discussing Jake's family's financial situation is that they are Jewish.
They're Jewish?
They're Jewish, yeah. Jake's family is Jewish.
Jake's Jewish?
Yes, Jake is Jewish.
That rules.
And I just wanted to give you
God.
Right? And I just wanted to give you that context really quick because I don't want you to say anything and later be like, oh, I wouldn't have said that thing about them being like really rich or whatever if I had known they were Jewish.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's really important. Wow.
Yes.
Holy shit. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
He's the protagonist of a kid series in the 90s, 2000s, and he's Jewish?
He is a Jewish boy with a Latino American best friend who has a crush on a black girl. And this book series came out in the 90s.
I love that, and I actually love that hasn't come up in the text yet. Specifically because you just really get to get a lot of white, non-Jewish young readers to very deeply see themselves and relate to Jake. And then later on, you get to be like, oh, by the way, he's Jewish. Like, you already love him. That fucking rules.
What do you think about it? Like, I think it kind of makes sense in a way that he has not mentioned this yet.
Oh yeah.
Because like it's he said at the beginning of this book, and everyone says at the beginning of every book, like it is canon that within these books the kids are changing things and not saying everything about themselves for like privacy. And given that the Jewish population in the US is still very, very small,
Yes.
like I can absolutely see like an in-universe justification of Jake not wanting to mention that, because it could genuinely make it a lot easier to figure out who he is.
Absolutely.
Because suddenly you have, I think Jewish people are like something like 2% of the population in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he said early on, like, oh, by the way, I'm Jewish, suddenly that narrows down potential people, in universe for this Jake to be from really, really wide to like 2% of that.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
So now that the light has turned on, Jake is scurrying about and he's absolutely terrified because there's a light on. And yeah, like surprise, surprise, cockroach brain is bad after all. It's not just chill. Wow, it's almost like being bugs is bad, a thing that Jake has literally always fucking known. So he is running amok. He is sprinting around. He is terrified. He is looking for a place to hide. I love this moment. He sees another cockroach and he's like, ew. Oh, sorry. Hi. Sorry. Sorry. Which I just thought was really funny. A good moment of levity that we needed. So I thought initially, so he does find a place to hide. And I thought that he was back in the matchbox where he had caught the first roach, but he's not. He just compares it to the matchbox where he caught the first roach. So I do think that it's worth saying that even just in comparison, because Jake does compare it to the matchbox, that he is currently stuck in a prison of his own making. So he is not actually in the matchbox.
No.
But we do know that he is trapped and stuck. And then instead of getting an explanation for what the fuck is going on directly in chronology here, we actually do a bit of a time skip. And we get to see, instead of Jake experiencing the subsequent events, he is now explaining all of this to the others. And almost everybody else is like laughing, like, teehee, isn't this so funny? Jake did this funny little funny thing. Cassie, meanwhile, is the only one with a goddamn brain present. And she is like, don't ever fucking do that shit again. You knew that was dangerous. You knew that was a bad idea. This is not hee hee ha ha. This is fucked up. Because she's right and because she cares about him.
I also just love in this scene, like Cassie like scolding Jake while in the background, like Marco and Rachel are just like, ugh.
Oh yeah.
Like giving, like the fucking peanut gallery is giving their running commentary on all of this. Yes. And meanwhile, like Cassie is like, you literally got stuck in a fucking roach motel and almost died. Don't do that shit.
Don't do that shit. It's actually really easy to not fucking do that shit, Jake. So, in fact, he got himself stuck in a roach trap behind the fridge. So he's like literally double stuck. Again, he survives. We know this because he's telling them. But he's stuck on this trap. And then as he's unmorphing, he's stuck behind the fridge. And his parents came home. So he is discussing all of this. He almost suffocated behind the fridge as he's demorphing because there's like not enough room for a human guy back there because it is a fridge. Luckily, he like just barely gets out. He finds out that his parents did come home early because the dad got a tennis injury. So that's why they're home earlier than expected. Again, Cassie the whole time is like, don't fucking do this. The others are like, ha ha. And then Jake gets them all caught up to speed on Tom's shit because Tom has been making moves and Jake is picking up on it. as soon as I started reading about this, I was like, there's no fucking way Tom is surviving this book. Like, because I was so prepped that this book was going to be crazy, I was like, what do you call that thing when you have trauma and so you notice everything?
Hypervigilance.
Thank you. So I was like hypervigilant.
Yeah.
So immediately I was like, Jake's self-destructive tendencies. Tom is gonna fucking die. This is gonna be the book where Jake has to fucking murder Tom. It's gonna happen. He's gonna murder Tom. Which I will say, spoilers, I suppose, though we're discussing the book in full, that is not what happens. What happens is substantially crazier.
Yes.
But that is what I was expecting at this point.
I also, just speaking of hypervigilance, can I make a comment about Marco?
Yes.
I realized while rereading this chapter last night and like reading like the way that like Marco is able to like kind of pick up on things that Jake isn't quite saying out loud. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's actually a parallel between Marco and Cassie where both of them read people really well, but Marco takes what he reads and assumes the worst from it, whereas Cassie takes what she reads and assumes the best from it.
That's so fucking true. And honestly, like, thank God both of them are on this team. Like, you really do need both perspectives to be fully prepared for whatever could happen.
Absolutely, because I think Cassie, does tend to do a better job of Marco of just kind of like getting a general read on people and figuring out like how they tick, and like things of that nature. But Marco, I would say far more than Cassie, is really good at figuring out when people are lying to him. Yes,
I agree. I feel like Cassie likewise is better at noticing when someone isn't lying, but isn't giving the full information of something.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
These two are truly the MVPs of this book. Like, without both of them being there, Jake would have been so, like, irrevocably fucked if they weren't both there.
Not just Jake, but everyone ever.
Yeah, everyone ever, the whole world.
I was about to say not just Jake, but all the Animorphs, but like everyone, the planet, everyone. Yeah,
if the Animorphs are fucked, the planet's fucked, the galaxy's fucked, everything's fucked. So thank God for Cassie and Marco.
And here, man, this is why Jake has so many fucking issues and complexes, because like here we are agreeing that like if something fucked up happened to Jake in this book, it would probably lead to the whole world being taken over.
Jake's got every right. Every right. Now, do I support his self-destructive tendencies? No, I do not. Do I understand them? Yes, completely. Oh, God. So he knows that Tom is moving up the ladder because of these like weird phone calls that Tom has been getting, that Jake has been noticing. He thinks that Tom is likely only second in the hierarchy here to Chapman. And Chapman, we know, is the head of the sharing here. He's like the project manager of this area of controllers. And Tom seems to be vying for Chapman's job. Jake notices these calls to the same people, and it's specifically 5 doctors at a local hospital, Berman Clinic. They put together that at this hospital, they have been yerking all of the unconscious patients. I didn't think of it, but like, yeah, of course they are. That's really smart. That's really smart. That's really convenient. That's very efficient of them. They're doing a good job.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will about the Yerks. At least they're efficient.
Yeah. At least they've got a good workflow. And so, again, hypervigilance moment. I was like, medical malpractice book. That's what's going to be fucked up. I don't know why I kept thinking that I would ever guess what makes this book so fucked up, because of course it's nothing that's like directly foreshadowed immediately. I am a fool. We know that there's something up with the hospital. We know that Tom is super involved. And we know that there's the sharing tonight. So they're going to go try to, again, be cockroaches and snoop and see what the fuck is going on. So Tom comes home later that day, and he is so good at being Tom at this point. Like the Yeerk controlling Tom is so good at blending in with the family. He's like shooting the shit with the parents. He's yeah.
I put down in my notes a short excerpt that just says, a totally normal scene around a totally normal dinner table. No one would ever have guessed the truth. In my brother's head was an alien, a creature from another planet. And beneath that, I just wrote Animorphs equals psychological horror sci-fi.
Yeah, straight up. And I think even like, I think back to book 2, there's that scene where Rachel is Fluffer McKitty in Melissa's house with Chapman, and Chapman and the wife are just like sitting there in complete silence. No TV on, nothing. And like how fucking creepy that is, but also how much that contrasts with Tom here. Like, I think if anything, it almost is another layer of displaying that Yeerk's ambition, that he's so much better at being a human person than Chapman is.
I wonder also if part of it just has to do with like the ages of their host bodies, because you know, Tom's Yeerk is a teenager. If he starts like acting like super fucking weird out of nowhere, you know, his host body has parents who might like start investigating or insist on like, you know, therapy. Could even like if he starts doing this shit that like the Chapmans were doing and just like sitting on the couch staring at the wall for hours and doing like other similarly weird shit, like that could even potentially lead to like being hospitalized. And like obviously he wants to avoid that. And I think also it makes sense given that like, you know, it's been established by now that like the sharing is like a huge part of how the Yeerks like recruit people. And Tom's Yeerk, by keeping up, you know, this act that like he's just like normal old Tom, is also able to very effectively maintain all of Tom's social relationships. And honestly, thinking about this now makes me wonder like how many people have gotten Yeerks in them because of Tom? How many people have been coerced into joining the sharing because, you know, tall, handsome, athletic Tom asked them to go to the sharing with him?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, I'm sure that this was so convincing and so alluring. And like knowing that Tom probably had quite a bit of social status at his school because of being like a basketball star. Like he's good. That like the social cachet that comes with that, especially at a high school and especially late 90s, early 2000s, especially basketball, like there would have been so many kids who would have been so like ready and willing to do anything for Tom to call them a friend and to like earn that proximal social cachet.
Absolutely. And honestly, you know, I think that like it seems to me like Tom was probably just like a very friendly and charismatic person. And I think the Yeerk is doing a great job of emulating that. To be honest, I kind of think that if Jake had not, you know, like met Elfangor, become an Animorph, discovered all the truth of all of this, I think there's a very good chance Tom would have gotten Jake to join the sharing.
Oh, totally. I think it would have been real fucking easy.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if Tom had come to a Jake who didn't know what was going on and said like, hey, I know we've been drifting apart a little lately. It's just because I'm so involved in the sharing. Come join it with me and we can hang out together and be close like we used to be. I think that absolutely would have worked on Jake if it had happened at the right time.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially like you said, like after that period of like some distance as this Yeerk was like learning to be Tom and what that was like and like what the fuck is a human. And then to come back and be like, it's been a while. Let's hang out.
Yeah, I honestly like this whole dynamic that Jake and Tom have right now, where like, you know, they have been kind of distant from each other for a while, and now Tom is making, you know, these like really intense moves to try to like get Jake to hang out with him again. It does also call to mind for me like that thing that happens in abusive relationships sometimes, whether romantic, familial, platonic, where the abusive party will withdraw all of their affection for a period, and then bring it back really harsh, like just like extreme levels of affection, but with conditions.
Yeah. Let's actually, okay. This is a good place to derail a little bit because I have a bone to pick.
Please.
So we know that a lot of words that mean specific things have been ground to a fine powder by overproliferation and a lack of education, specifically in digital spaces. So we can look at this in regards to, I think gaslighting is like one of the most common examples where people will call any type of lying gaslighting. But the term I want to dissect here, because it pisses me off really bad, is quote unquote the cycle of abuse. So a lot of people think that the cycle of abuse is in regards to how abuse victims can later go on and abuse other people because of what has been done to them and because of how they have been trained to think that that's how you treat other people. And that is a thing. But the cycle of abuse is very specifically about that pattern that we were just talking about. It is about the patterns that abusers lure you into and the cycles they lure you into, where they do the affection and then the withholding and the conflict and the blaming and then coming back with the loving. Like before I untangent us, because I think this is a very important tangent, but I also think that I know us and that we'll talk about this forever. I do want to just read off the 4 stages of the cycle of abuse. I am pulling this from Wikipedia. However, this is, again, like a psychological term that has been used for quite some time. And these 4 steps have been very deeply established by like tons and tons and tons of writing and research from actual like psychology scholars. So because this is really important to me that we don't use this term to mean another thing, here is what the cycle of abuse is in its 4 steps, as displayed from a graphic on Wikipedia, but also other sources. 1, tension building. Tensions increase, breakdown of communication, victim becomes fearful and feels they need to placate the abuser. 2, incident. Verbal, emotional, and physical abuse. Anger, blaming, arguing. Threats, intimidation. 3, reconciliation. Abuser apologizes, gives excuses, blames the victim, denies the abuse occurred, or says that it wasn't as bad as the victim claims. 4, calm. Incident is quote-unquote forgotten. No abuse is taking place, the quote-unquote honeymoon phase. So this is what we're talking about is we have, in stage 2, an incident where some sort of like huge conflict occurs. Then the abuser is like, oh, I'm sorry, but also it wasn't that bad. And then we have, again, this honeymoon phase, this like over-the-top loving and affection. And as that slowly starts deteriorating, as any honeymoon phase does, we get back into step 1, tension building. This is what the cycle of abuse is. This is what I'm talking about. So if these patterns are familiar with you, if you can relate to these 4 steps in a relationship that you are in, regardless of what kind of relationship that is, you should talk to somebody. You should talk to a close friend about this. You should talk to a therapist about this. You you should be thinking about this very deeply, and I love you.
And I just want to say, if you are worried about like, oh, what if I make them look bad? You're not making them look bad. Their actions, their choices are what will make them look bad. It is okay for you to talk about their actions and their choices that they have made and that affect you. Goddamn right.
And keep receipts.
And keep receipts, yes.
Start documenting. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Abuse survivor advice with the two of us on our Animorphs podcast.
When are we going to start just fucking like a trauma psychology whatever podcast? We need like an entire like companion podcast to Nevermorph that's just us like unpacking like the trauma and like the psychology of these poor children.
Seriously. I think we do quite a good bit, but I think we could literally just go on for ages. So
I think we could, yeah.
Nevermorphed is hosted, edited, and produced by Will Williams. Our theme music is The Chase by Joey Hendricks. Our title is by Eddie Feely, and this podcast would not exist without Mike Schubert's podcast, Potterless and the Newest Olympian. You can find his works at shub.es, that's shub.es. Nevermorphed is a proud member of Hug House Productions. You can find more at hughouse.productions and follow us on Tumblr at Nevermorphed. Get morphin'! On March 27th, 2024, Elon Musk was deposed in a libel lawsuit filed by Ben Brody. Musk's lawyer, Alex Spiro, tried to retroactively mark the deposition as confidential, but it wasn't.
Of course I can ask him, do you think you committed actual malice? Do you think you were reckless? Of course I can ask those questions.
The deposition is a new Hug House podcast reenactment of the entire deposition, word by word, in full, taken very seriously.
Things that he did wrong.
But that's the point. That's not what you're allowed
Until he really just can't anymore?
Not what you're allowed to do in the deposition. You can't just get him talking.
The deposition drops on the 4th of July, 2024, with 4 weekly episodes. Subscribe on your podcatcher of choice or find us at hughouse.productions today.